So have you ever, like, wondered how Dumbledore led Hogwarts? Through, like, so many crises. Like, how did he inspire all those wizards and witches
Mm,
and still have time for, like, lemon drops, you know?
right.
We're going to do a deep dive today
Mm.
into his leadership style. We're going to be using your insights, of course, from the Harry Potter books, books 2 through 7. No movies this time.
Okay. Sounds fun.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you hit on something really interesting there. It's that a lot of leaders are good at one thing, you know?
right.
But Dumbledore, he excelled at so many. And what's fascinating to me is that he wasn't just focused on one house or one type of student.
Mm-hmm.
He was a leader for everyone at Hogwarts, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, okay, so let's kind of unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
So we know that Hogwarts has the 4 houses. You know, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin. Did Dumbledore do anything specifically to create, like, that sense of unity?
Absolutely. Instead of encouraging like the rivalry between them, you know, he actually always emphasized the strength in their diversity. Remember his Sorting Hat speech back in book 6?
Yeah, yeah.
He practically begged the students to put aside their differences, you know, and to like stand together
I,
against the darkness.
right. Yeah.
He even specifically said, "We are only as strong as we are united, as weak as we are divided."
Hmm.
Powerful stuff, right?
Yeah, that is a powerful quote. And it's so relevant too, I think, to, like, anyone, even outside of Hogwarts. You know, did he do anything else to kind of demonstrate that belief in unity?
Yeah, so Dumbledore recognized that true community isn't about blind loyalty to one group,
Right.
but about respecting and valuing the contributions of all individuals.
Okay.
We see this again in book 6 when he disapproves of Hagrid's like over-the-top display of house pride at the start of Term Feast. It's subtle,
Yeah.
but it shows his commitment to a Hogwarts where everyone feels valued.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. It sounds like he was very conscious of the impact of his words and actions on the students.
Yeah.
I mean, but Dumbledore was also a powerful wizard. Did he ever let the students have any freedom?
Yeah.
Or was it all just like rules and oversight?
That's where Dumbledore's leadership gets really nuanced, you know?
Okay.
Because he understood that there was a balance between oversight and freedom.
Okay.
Think about Sirius Black in book 3.
Right.
Even when the Ministry wanted to, like, imprison Sirius, Dumbledore trusted his innocence and allowed him to remain free because he understood the protection that Hogwarts offered.
Yeah, so that was definitely a risk. But it seems like, I mean, he calculated that risk pretty carefully.
Mm,
But were there times when he did step in, lay down the law?
he did.
Okay.
And that's important, too.
Mm-hmm.
Effective leadership involves finding the right balance between control and autonomy.
Yeah.
In book 2, for example, when Harry and Ron flew the car to school,
Right, yeah.
Dumbledore disciplined them, but he also gave them space to explain their actions.
Yeah. So he set boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
but also valued their, like, perspectives
Mm.
and recognized that they were still learning.
Exactly. And even when students were facing danger, like during the attacks, during the Chamber of Secrets incident, he didn't lock down the school entirely. He believed in their resilience and found ways to protect them while still allowing them some freedom.
Okay, so that must have gone a long way in, like, building trust
Right.
with students.
Right.
Speaking of trust, I mean, Dumbledore always seemed so calm and composed, even in the middle of, like, a crisis.
Right.
How did that impact things at Hogwarts?
I mean, Dumbledore's calm demeanor was incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in a crisis, a leader who panics can create chaos and uncertainty.
Yeah.
But Dumbledore's unwavering calmness during things like Fudge's denial of Voldemort's return, or even Draco's suspicious activities in Book 6, showed his strength, and it inspired confidence in those around him.
Yeah, it's almost like his calmness was contagious. Instead of reacting impulsively, he stayed collected, which probably allowed him to think clearly and make better decisions. Do you think that influenced how the students, like, handled things?
I think it absolutely did. You think about it. If your leader is panicking, you're going to panic too.
Right.
But if they're steady and composed,
Yeah.
it creates a sense of security, a feeling that things are under control, even when everything seems to be falling apart.
Yeah, and that sense of security can be crucial, especially for young students facing so much uncertainty and danger, right?
Absolutely.
It's a powerful reminder for any leader. Staying calm under pressure can make all the difference in how your team responds to a crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's interesting, you know. Because that calmness also played a role in how Dumbledore encouraged responsibility and ethical growth in the students.
Okay.
He believed in their potential for good,
Oh, okay.
even when they made mistakes.
So he wasn't just about setting rules and boundaries. He was actually invested in, like, helping them develop their own, like, moral compass.
Yeah.
What are some examples of this?
Think back to, like, the Triwizard Tournament in Book 4.
Right.
It was dangerous, but Dumbledore didn't stop Harry from participating. He saw it as a chance for Harry to, face challenges head on and grow from the experience.
It sounds like he trusted them to make their own choices,
Mm-hmm.
even if it meant they might, stumble along the way.
Yeah.
But did he just let them figure everything out on their own?
He offered guidance,
Okay.
but he never forced his opinions on them.
Right.
Even in Book 2, with the flying car incident,
Right.
he expressed disappointment, but gave Harry and Ron a chance to explain themselves and learn from their mistake. He wasn't controlling them. He was guiding them to become responsible individuals.
Yeah, that's such a valuable leadership lesson. It's about empowering your team to, like, make decisions
Yeah.
and to learn from their experiences, good or bad, creating an environment where mistakes aren't seen as failures, but as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And that ties into another aspect of Dumbledore's leadership that often sparks debate. His approach to transparency.
Yeah.
He sometimes withheld information,
Right.
believing it was for the greater good, especially when it came to, protecting Harry.
Yeah, that's a tough one. On the one hand, you want to be honest and open, but on the other hand, sometimes protecting someone you care about means shielding them from certain truths. It's like that age-old question. Is it okay to lie to protect someone?
It's a classic ethical dilemma, and there are valid arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
In Dumbledore's case, he believed that knowing the full prophecy could put a huge burden on Harry,
Yeah.
maybe even make him feel like he had no control over his own destiny.
Right. And remember, in Book 7, we learned why Dumbledore left Harry with the Dursleys.
Yeah.
It wasn't ideal, but it kept Harry safe from Voldemort. Dumbledore made a difficult choice, prioritizing Harry's safety over his comfort.
Right. He was playing the long game.
Yeah.
Making strategic decisions based on what he believed would ultimately lead to the best outcome, even if those decisions were painful or controversial in the moment.
Okay, so we've talked about Dumbledore's commitment to inclusivity, his ability to balance oversight with freedom, his calming influence, and his role in fostering both responsibility and ethical growth in the students. But you mentioned earlier that Dumbledore's past, like, played a role in shaping his leadership.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
It's fascinating, isn't it? We learn in Book 7, and in that Hogwarts Cafe article you sent, that as a young man, Dumbledore was actually quite ambitious. He desired power, recognition, even felt a lack of appreciation from his family.
It's a common thread, I think, among leaders.
Yeah.
That desire to make a mark on the world.
Mm.
But it sounds like something happened that changed his perspective.
Yeah, a family tragedy involving his sister Ariana forced him to confront the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of a moral compass. It's a reminder that even the greatest leaders are shaped by their experiences, their losses, and their regrets.
It makes you wonder how different Hogwarts would have been if those events hadn't happened. Do you think he would have been the same leader?
It's hard to say for sure, but it seems like those experiences taught him valuable lessons about the true meaning of power, and the importance of using your influence to serve others.
And that's exactly what he did at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
He channeled his ambition into something truly meaningful, nurturing young minds, fostering a community, and fighting for a better world. It's a powerful reminder that our past experiences, even the painful ones, can shape us into the leaders we become.
Absolutely. And it speaks to Dumbledore's capacity for growth, his ability to learn from his mistakes, and to become a better, more compassionate leader because of those experiences.
Speaking of compassion, one of the things that always stood out to me about Dumbledore was his belief in people's capacity for good.
Yeah.
Even those who had made terrible mistakes.
That's such a crucial aspect of his leadership. He didn't just punish wrongdoings. He saw the potential for redemption in everyone.
Like, take Snape, for example. Dumbledore knew about his past, his connection to Voldemort, but he still believed that Snape could change, that he could choose a different path.
And that belief, as we know, played a pivotal role in Voldemort's downfall. Snape's redemption arc is a testament to Dumbledore's willingness to see the good in people, even when it was hidden beneath layers of pain and resentment.
It's a powerful reminder that people can change, that forgiveness is possible, and that even those who have made mistakes can play a vital role in fighting for what's right.
Yeah. And Dumbledore didn't just offer second chances to those who had wronged him personally. He extended that compassion to everyone. Look at Hagrid, whose love for magical creatures often got him into trouble. Dumbledore never gave up on him, recognizing his good heart and his loyalty.
Yeah, he saw the value in Hagrid's unique perspective, his connection to the natural world, even when others might have dismissed him. It's a reminder that great leaders embrace diversity, not just in terms of backgrounds, but in terms of thought and experience.
And that acceptance, that belief in people's inherent goodness, created a culture of compassion and understanding at Hogwarts. It allowed students to feel safe, to make mistakes, and to grow without fear of judgment or condemnation.
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's about creating an environment where people feel supported, where they can be themselves, flaws and all, and where they're encouraged to learn and grow from their experiences.
It's about fostering a sense of belonging, a sense of community, where everyone feels valued and respected, regardless of their past mistakes or perceived shortcomings.
And that's a powerful legacy to leave behind, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a legacy that continues to inspire us to be more compassionate, more understanding, and more forgiving in our own lives and in the world around us.
Now, we've talked a lot about Dumbledore's impact on the overall culture at Hogwarts, but I'm curious about his specific approach to education. What kind of learning environment did he foster?
Dumbledore was a teacher at heart.
Mm-hmm.
He believed that education wasn't about rote memorization or simply passing exams. It was about empowering students to think for themselves, to question assumptions, and to develop a lifelong love of learning.
That's interesting. So it wasn't just about filling their heads with facts and figures.
No.
He wanted them to engage with the material, to become critical thinkers.
Exactly.
What are some examples of how he did that?
Think about those cryptic clues he'd often give Harry. Those riddles that required him to think outside the box and to use his wit and resourcefulness to solve them. He wasn't handing Harry the answers. He was challenging him to find them himself.
It's like he was teaching Harry how to learn, how to approach problems with a curious and analytical mind. Did he encourage that kind of thinking in other students as well?
Absolutely. Remember in Book 3, Professor Lupin had the students facing Boggarts in defense against the dark arts class.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant example of experiential learning, teaching them valuable skills by confronting their fears in a safe environment.
It's about making learning relevant, isn't it? Connecting it to their lives and experiences in a way that sticks with them.
Did Dumbledore encourage any other types of learning experiences beyond the traditional classroom setting?
He did. He recognized that learning happens everywhere, not just within the confines of a classroom. When Umbridge was stifling any practical magic in Book 5, he supported the creation of Dumbledore's Army, a student-led group where they could practice defensive spells and learn from each other. That's a great example of how he empowered students to take ownership of their education. He wasn't just a dispenser of knowledge. He was a facilitator, a guide, who created opportunities for them to learn and grow independently.
Exactly. And even those seemingly random assignments like Snape's essays in Book 6 often had a hidden purpose, a deeper meaning that connected to the challenges the students were facing in the real world.
It's like he was weaving those connections, helping them see how the things they were learning in the classroom applied to their lives, to the complex situations they were facing.
He was a master at making learning relevant, engaging, and ultimately transformative. And he wasn't afraid to use humor, creativity, and even a touch of mischief to make it fun.
Well, Hogwarts itself is pretty magical. The moving staircases, the secret passages, the feasts in the Great Hall. It's like the castle itself is a learning environment.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
Dumbledore understood that. He fostered an environment where learning was an adventure, where curiosity was encouraged, and where students felt safe to explore, to experiment, and to embrace the unknown.
And that sense of wonder, that thirst for knowledge, is something that stays with us long after we leave school, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of a truly inspirational teacher, someone who can ignite that spark of curiosity and foster a lifelong love of learning, and Dumbledore was certainly that.
Now, we've talked about Dumbledore's approach to education, his ability to make learning relevant and engaging. But what about his role as a mentor? Did he have a personal impact on the students' lives beyond the classroom?
Dumbledore wasn't just a distant figurehead. He took a personal interest in his students, offering guidance and support tailored to their individual needs. His relationship with Harry is a perfect example of that.
He was a constant source of wisdom and encouragement for Harry, wasn't he? Always there to offer advice, but also to let Harry make his own choices, even when those choices were difficult or dangerous.
Exactly. He recognized Harry's potential, but he also understood his vulnerabilities, his tendency to act impulsively, and his need for connection. He never tried to force Harry into a mold. He accepted him for who he was, flaws and all.
It's a reminder that true mentorship isn't about controlling someone's journey.
No.
It's about walking alongside them, offering support, but ultimately allowing them to find their own path, to make their own mistakes, and to learn and grow from those experiences.
And it wasn't just Harry. He mentored countless other students, recognizing their unique talents and guiding them towards their own paths to success. Think about Neville, Luna, even Ron and Hermione. They all benefited from his guidance and support.
He created a culture of mentorship at Hogwarts, where students felt seen, heard, and valued for who they were. He wasn't just a headmaster, he was a guide, a confidant, and a source of unwavering support for the students.
And that's a powerful legacy to leave behind.
Yeah.
A legacy of mentorship, of empowering others to find their voices and to reach their full potential. It's a reminder that everyone needs someone who believes in them, someone who sees their potential, and someone who encourages them to chase their dreams, even when those dreams seem impossible.
Well said. We've talked about Dumbledore's approach to education and mentorship, but what about discipline?
Right.
He seemed pretty laid back, but I'm sure there were times when he had to step in and hold students accountable for their actions.
You're right. He wasn't a strict disciplinarian in the traditional sense. He believed in restorative justice,
Okay.
giving students the opportunity to make amends for their wrongdoings and to learn from their mistakes. Remember in book 2 when Harry and Ron flew the car to school?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That could have gotten them expelled?
absolutely.
What did Dumbledore do?
Instead of resorting to harsh punishments, he gave them a chance to explain themselves, to understand the risks they took, and to learn from their mistake. He saw discipline as a tool for growth, not as a means of control or punishment.
That's a refreshing perspective. It's about helping students understand the consequences of their actions and giving them the tools to make better choices in the future.
Exactly, and his approach fostered a culture of accountability at Hogwarts. Students knew that their actions had consequences, but they also knew that they had the opportunity to make things right, to learn, and to grow from their experiences.
Now, we can't talk about Dumbledore without addressing a topic that often sparks debate among fans.
Yeah.
His decision to keep certain information from Harry, particularly about the prophecy.
Right.
Some argue it was manipulative, even using Harry as a pawn in his grand plan.
It's a valid concern, and it's important to acknowledge the ethical complexities of his actions. However, it's crucial to consider the context. He was facing a dark wizard of immense power, a threat to the entire wizarding world.
So he believed that sometimes protecting Harry meant shielding him from certain truths.
Yes,
At least until he was ready to handle them.
exactly. He was concerned about the burden the prophecy could place on Harry, and the potential for Voldemort to manipulate him if he knew the full extent of it. It was a difficult choice, a morally ambiguous one, but he believed he was acting in Harry's best interests.
It's a reminder that leadership often requires making tough choices. Choices that might not be popular or easily understood, but are made with the best intentions for the greater good.
And it's a reminder that even the wisest, most benevolent leaders sometimes have to navigate morally gray areas, to make choices that are complex and nuanced, and to accept the consequences of those choices.
But even though he kept things from Harry, he never actually lied to him.
You're right. He often gave Harry partial truths, bits of information that would guide him in the right direction, without revealing the full picture. It was almost like he was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for Harry to follow, trusting him to put the pieces together in his own time.
He believed in Harry's intelligence, his resourcefulness, and his ability to ultimately figure things out for himself.
And even though Harry might have been frustrated at times by Dumbledore's cryptic pronouncements and evasive answers, he always trusted in Dumbledore's wisdom and good intentions.
Yeah.
Their relationship was built on a deep bond of respect and affection, a mentorship that went beyond the traditional student-teacher dynamic.
Speaking of Dumbledore's role as a mentor, let's talk about how he nurtured leadership qualities in his students. Did he do anything specific to prepare them for leadership roles in the wizarding world?
Dumbledore understood that leadership is not about inherent traits or bloodlines,
Right.
but about character, courage, and the willingness to stand up for what's right. He nurtured these qualities in his students in subtle but profound ways.
Can you give us some examples? How did he specifically cultivate leadership in those around him?
Dumbledore created opportunities for students to demonstrate leadership, to step outside their comfort zones and take on responsibility. Think about the Tri-Wizard Tournament.
Okay.
It wasn't just a test of magical skill, it was a crucible that forced Harry to confront his fears, to make difficult decisions, and to ultimately demonstrate the courage and leadership required of a true Gryffindor.
He didn't just tell Harry to be brave.
Right.
He put him in situations that demanded bravery,
Yeah.
that forced him to rise to the occasion.
Exactly. And he did the same for other students. Remember when he appointed Ron as prefect in Book 5? Ron, despite his insecurities, rose to the challenge, demonstrating leadership qualities he might not have even known he possessed.
Yeah, Dumbledore saw potential in Ron that perhaps even Ron himself didn't see.
Right.
He wasn't just appointing prefects, he was cultivating future leaders.
Absolutely. And let's not forget Hermione. She was a natural leader, but Dumbledore provided her with the space and support to hone her skills. Her role in creating Dumbledore's army, in rallying students together and teaching them defensive spells, showcased her strategic thinking, her organizational skills, and her unwavering commitment to fighting for what she believed in.
Just like he was setting the stage for them to take on leadership roles in the fight against Voldemort.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't just teaching them magic.
Right.
He was preparing them to lead the resistance, to become the next generation of defenders of the wizarding world.
He understood that the fight against darkness wouldn't end with him. He needed to empower the next generation to carry the torch, to fight for a better future. And he did that by fostering their leadership skills, their courage, and their belief in their ability to make a difference.
It's such a powerful message. Leadership isn't about titles or positions. It's about taking action, inspiring others, and fighting for what you believe in. And Dumbledore instilled that belief in his students, preparing them to lead, to fight, and to ultimately change the world.
It's a message that resonates with all of us, isn't it? We all have the potential to be leaders,
Right.
to make a difference in our own communities and in the world around us.
Yeah.
And Dumbledore's example reminds us that even small acts of courage, of kindness, of standing up for what we believe in can have a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same.
Okay, so we've talked about Dumbledore's role in fostering leadership qualities in his students, his approach to discipline, and his complex decisions regarding transparency. But let's shift gears a bit and explore another fascinating aspect of his leadership, his role as a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the wizarding world.
He was a figure of stability, wisdom, and unwavering belief in the power of good to triumph over evil. He embodied the spirit of resistance, of standing up to tyranny and oppression, even when it seemed like all hope was lost.
I remember that scene in Book 5, when Fudge and the Ministry were desperately trying to deny the truth about Voldemort's return.
Yeah.
Dumbledore stood firm, refusing to be silenced or intimidated. He spoke truth to power, reminding everyone that ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away.
He became a rallying point for those who believed in fighting for what's right, who refused to give in to fear or despair. His unwavering belief in the power of love, of unity, and of the inherent goodness within each of us inspired others to fight for a better world, even when the odds seemed stacked against them.
It's like he was a beacon in the darkness, a symbol of hope and defiance in the face of overwhelming adversity.
Exactly. And it wasn't just his words that inspired hope.
Right.
It was his actions,
Yeah.
his willingness to put himself on the line,
Right.
to risk his own safety and reputation to protect others and to fight for what he believed in.
He's a true leader, not just in title, but in spirit,
Right.
inspiring others through his example, through his unwavering commitment to justice, compassion, and the greater good.
And that's the kind of leadership we need more of in the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Leadership that's not about power or control, but about service, about empowering others, and about inspiring hope in the face of adversity.
Absolutely. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, even when it's
Yeah.
unpopular. It's about believing in the possibility of a better world and fighting for that world, no matter the cost.
And it's about recognizing that even in the darkest of times, light will always find a way to shine through as long as we have the courage to keep believing, to keep fighting, and to keep hoping.
Dumbledore's legacy is a powerful reminder of that truth. And it's a legacy that continues to inspire us, to challenge us, and to give us hope, even in the face of our own personal struggles and the challenges that face the world today.
Beautifully said. You know, it's also fascinating to consider how Dumbledore's leadership style reflects the values and ideals of the wizarding world as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't just shaping Hogwarts.
No.
He was embodying the very spirit of what it meant to be a wizard, a witch, a member of this magical community.
Think about his emphasis on inclusivity, on welcoming students from all backgrounds.
Yeah.
Regardless of their blood status or magical abilities, it's a stark contrast to the prejudice and bigotry we see in the pureblood supremacist movement.
Yeah. Dumbledore represents the best of the wizarding world.
Yeah.
Its tolerance, its diversity, and its belief in the power of magic to unite people rather than divide them.
His commitment to fighting against the forces of darkness reflects the deep-seated belief in the power of good to triumph over evil. He's a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in a world that's often shrouded in darkness and fear.
And his leadership inspires others to stand up for what's right, to fight for justice and equality, and to believe in the possibility of a better future. It's a message that resonates deeply, especially in a world that often feels divided and uncertain.
He reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, there's always a reason to hope, a reason to fight, and a reason to believe in the power of love to overcome even the darkest of forces.
Okay, so we've talked about Dumbledore as a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the wizarding world. But let's delve into a more specific aspect of his leadership. His approach to dealing with conflict.
Yeah.
He wasn't about force or power plays.
No.
He seemed to have a real knack for diplomacy
Yeah.
and finding peaceful resolutions.
He was a master at navigating complex interpersonal relationships and finding common ground even in the most heated disagreements. He understood that conflict is a natural part of any community,
Right.
but he also believed that conflict could be resolved peacefully through dialogue, empathy, and compromise.
I'm thinking about that scene in Book 5, when Hagrid returns from his mission to the Giants, and the Centaurs are furious with him for interfering in their affairs.
Yeah.
Dumbledore doesn't take sides or escalate the conflict.
No.
Instead, he listens, empathizes, and seeks to understand their anger.
He acts as a mediator, a bridge between two opposing forces, seeking to find common ground and build understanding. And he consistently demonstrates this ability to navigate conflict peacefully, whether it's dealing with interhouse rivalries or even confronting the Ministry's denial of Voldemort's return.
It's a far cry from the, like, us versus them mentality we often see in the world today.
Right.
Dumbledore's approach to conflict resolution is a reminder that it's possible to disagree without being disagreeable, to stand up for what you believe in without resorting to aggression or hostility.
It's a reminder that building bridges of understanding, empathy, and respect is essential for creating a more peaceful and harmonious world.
And let's talk about Dumbledore's role as a protector,
Okay.
as a guardian of Hogwarts and its students.
Yes.
He wasn't just a headmaster.
Right.
He was a shield, safeguarding them from the darkness that threatened to engulf the wizarding world.
He was fiercely protective of his students,
Yeah.
creating a safe haven where they could learn and grow.
Right.
Think about all the security measures at Hogwarts.
Right.
The protective charms, the secret passages, the watchful gargoyles.
Yeah.
He was constantly vigilant, aware of the potential threats,
Yeah.
and taking steps to ensure their safety and well-being.
And it wasn't just physical protection.
No.
He also shielded them from emotional harm, from the despair that could consume them in the face of Voldemort's growing power.
Right.
He fostered a sense of community, a sense of belonging and support, where they felt safe to be themselves and to find solace in one another.
He created a sanctuary within those castle walls,
Yeah.
a place where they could find refuge from the storms that raged outside. And he did all of this with quiet strength, gentle but unwavering resolve. He never flaunted his power, never sought to intimidate or control. He led through example, through compassion, and through an unwavering belief in the power of love to conquer even the darkest of forces.
That's the kind of protector we all need in our lives, isn't it?
Yes.
Someone who believes in us,
Yes.
who supports us, and who creates a safe space for us to be ourselves,
Yeah.
to grow and to flourish.
Absolutely.
Someone who stands between us and the darkness, shielding us from harm, and reminding us that even in the face of adversity, there's always hope, love, and the possibility of a brighter future.
Beautifully said.
We've covered so much ground already, from Dumbledore's approach to unity and discipline, to his role as a mentor and a symbol of hope. But before we wrap up, we have to talk about, I think, the sacrifices that he made. It seems like leadership, especially in times of crisis, often comes at a personal cost.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Dumbledore bore a heavy weight. You know, the responsibility for Hogwarts, the burden of knowledge, the constant threat of danger, all with like a quiet strength that's both inspiring and a little bit heartbreaking when you think about it.
It makes you wonder if it ever felt like too much.
Right.
In
Yeah.
book 5, he tells Harry that, the choices we make define who we truly are. Do you think he was also reflecting on his own sacrifices?
Oh, absolutely. I think he was. He lost loved ones. He faced betrayals. He confronted unimaginable darkness. And yet, he never wavered in his commitment to protecting Hogwarts
Hmm.
and fighting for a better world. You know, those sacrifices, I think, make his triumphs even more meaningful because they show us that real leadership isn't about seeking a comfortable path. It's about making difficult choices for the greater good.
And he never seemed to seek recognition or praise
Yeah,
for those sacrifices.
yeah.
It was all about serving a purpose larger than himself.
Exactly. True leadership isn't about personal gain or glory.
Right.
It's about serving others, making a positive impact on the world, even if it goes
No.
unnoticed. Dumbledore's legacy is a testament to that selfless dedication.
He wasn't perfect,
Right.
of course, but he was a truly good leader,
Yeah.
one who inspired, generations of witches and wizards to be brave and compassionate and stand up for what's right. It's a legacy worth celebrating and trying to emulate, I think, in our own lives.
I completely agree. Now, before we go, I can't help but think about that lingering question we brought up earlier. Would Dumbledore have approved of Harry's decision to sacrifice himself?
It's such a complex question because it goes to the heart of everything Dumbledore believed in, right?
Right.
I mean, he knew defeating Voldemort wouldn't be easy
Right.
and it would require, sacrifices. He even told Harry that there's a difference between choosing to die and being forced to face death, and that we must always choose what is right over what is easy.
And Harry's choice to face Voldemort, believing it meant his death, was the ultimate act of defiance. You know, he chose love over fear
Yeah.
and willingly sacrificed himself for the greater good.
Right.
It mirrors the sacrifices that Dumbledore made throughout his life,
Yeah.
putting the needs of others before his own, even when it meant facing death.
So while we can never know for sure, I believe Dumbledore would have understood Harry's choice. He would have seen it as a culmination of everything he had taught Harry, a testament to his courage, his selflessness, and his unwavering belief in the power of love.
It's a powerful reminder that true leadership sometimes requires the ultimate sacrifice. But even in that sacrifice, there can be victory.
Yeah.
Harry's choice, like Dumbledore's, demonstrates that love can conquer hate, and light can overcome even the darkest of shadows.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the intricacies of Dumbledore's leadership, let's remember the lessons that we've uncovered. It's not just about magic and Hogwarts. It's about the choices we make,
Right.
the sacrifices we're willing to endure, and the unwavering belief in the power of good to triumph over evil.
Let's be inspired by Dumbledore's example, by his wisdom and compassion, and strive to embody those qualities in our own lives. Let's fight for what's right, even when it's hard. Let's choose love over fear, always.
All right, so today we're diving deep into some of the murky waters surrounding Albus Dumbledore.
Murky waters, good way to put it.
Yeah, and we're going to be tackling the ethical dilemmas
Yeah.
of this incredibly powerful and influential wizard.
Right.
Specifically, how he seemed to be constantly balancing this idea of protecting Harry Potter, which he clearly wanted to do, but also manipulating him for what he, Dumbledore, perceived as the greater good.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, you know, because on the surface, right, Dumbledore is often seen as this beacon of goodness, this
Right.
unwavering light.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think when we start to kind of peel back the layers a little bit and really examine some of his actions and his choices, things get a lot more complex.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about this guy, right? This powerful wizard, this headmaster,
Yep.
who placed a child with abusive relatives, withheld crucial information, and essentially orchestrated Harry's entire life, leading up to a pretty much preordained confrontation with Voldemort.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, and I think one of the key frameworks that we can use to kind of understand and analyze Dumbledore's actions is this concept of utilitarianism.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
What exactly do we mean when we talk about utilitarianism?
So utilitarianism is this philosophical idea
Mm.
that basically actions are right if they benefit the majority,
Okay.
even if it means sacrificing, the well-being of a few.
So it's like a moral cost-benefit analysis almost.
Exactly, yeah. And it's this kind of, it's almost like a cold, calculating way of
Mm.
looking at morality. But it's a very powerful idea, and I think Dumbledore in many ways is a master of this kind of utilitarian approach to decision making.
So can you give us a concrete example from the books
Mhm.
of how Dumbledore's actions, particularly towards Harry, reflect this utilitarian approach?
Yeah, so I think one of the most obvious examples
Yeah.
is Dumbledore's decision to keep Harry in the dark
Yeah.
about the prophecy for so long.
Right.
I mean, we see this most explicitly in Order of the Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
When Dumbledore himself admits to this. He says, I cared, let me see if I can find the exact quote. I cared more for your happiness than your knowing the truth. And this is Dumbledore speaking directly to Harry.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, and so on the surface, right, it seems like a noble thing. Like he's trying to shield Harry from this weight of this knowledge.
To give him some semblance of a normal childhood.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
To let him, experience joy and friendship and all those things without this dark cloud hanging over him.
But then at the same time, you have to ask, was he robbing Harry of the agency
Yeah.
to make his own choices?
That's exactly the question.
Right.
I mean, by withholding this information, even if it was done, with the best of intentions,
Yeah.
was he essentially manipulating Harry? Was he preventing Harry from making informed decisions about his own life?
Even if those choices were difficult.
Even if those choices were difficult, yeah. And I think that's the ethical tightrope walk with utilitarianism, isn't it? It forces us to ask these really tough questions about individual autonomy versus, the greater good, and who gets to decide what that greater good even is.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what choices Harry might have made differently had he known the full extent of the prophecy from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Or at least, approach things differently.
Yeah. It raises these questions about informed consent.
Right.
And manipulation of agency, even when it's done, with seemingly good intentions. And it's not just about the prophecy, right? I mean, we see this pattern of Dumbledore making these decisions for Harry's, quote, own good throughout the entire series.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the most kind of stark examples of this is how Dumbledore handled Harry's living arrangements with the Dursleys.
The Dursleys.
I mean, sending him to live with his abusive aunt and uncle, that was a pretty brutal move.
Yeah.
Even if it was meant to ensure his safety.
Right. And again, that's another instance where I think we see this utilitarian calculus, at play. We learn in the very first book, Sorcerer's Stone, that, Hagrid tells Harry that he was sent to the Dursleys because of the protection afforded by his mother's sacrifice.
All right.
And Dumbledore knew. I mean, he knew that it wouldn't be pleasant.
Yeah.
He knew that it would be a difficult and potentially, damaging experience for Harry. But in his mind, that magical protection was paramount.
So he knowingly subjected him to years of misery and neglect.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of this magical safety net.
Right.
It's almost, again, this classic case of, prioritizing the needs of the many. In this case, the entire wizarding world. For the well-being of one
child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I think one of the most kind of troubling aspects of Dumbledore's approach to protecting Harry.
And it leads us to this other, I think, ethically complex layer of his actions, which is the emotional bond that he fosters with Harry.
Right.
I mean, they share, moments, advice, support, all while knowing this likely fate that awaits Harry.
Right. And that always kind of struck me as a little bit manipulative. Like, was he deliberately deepening this connection, knowing that it would just make Harry's eventual sacrifice all the more painful?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it makes you wonder, right? I mean, was that emotional connection genuine?
Yeah.
Or was it part of this larger calculated plan, and even Dumbledore wants to grapple with this. In Order of the Phoenix, he tells Harry, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically says, I cared about you too much. Let me see if I can find the exact. I acted exactly as Voldemort expects we fools who love to act. So he's kind of acknowledging there that his own emotions, his own feelings for Harry might have clouded his judgment.
It's like he's acknowledging the potential for emotional manipulation within their relationship.
Exactly. And it forces us, again, to ask these tough questions about, can true compassion coexist with calculated actions? Is it possible to separate those two things, especially when you're dealing with someone as vulnerable as Harry?
That's like he was playing this incredibly high-stakes game.
Right.
And Harry was both a beloved pawn and a powerful weapon.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to another key aspect of Dumbledore's strategy, which is his use of others as means to an end.
Right.
And I think we see this most prominently with Snape.
Right.
I mean, Snape spent years as a double agent, risking his life
Right.
to fulfill Dumbledore's plan.
And it wasn't just Snape.
Right.
I mean, Hagrid, Lupin, even just like the kids.
Students.
Like they were all pulled into Dumbledore's web,
Yeah.
often without knowing the full extent of what they were getting into.
Right, exactly. And I think it raises this question of, was he justified in using others as tools in this grand game?
In this war against Voldemort, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, does the greater good justify potentially endangering those involved?
Right. And I think that's a question that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into Dumbledore's actions and choices. I mean, it's this constant weighing of the potential benefits against the potential risks.
Right.
But those risks often translated into very real consequences for the people around him. I mean, he seemed to operate under this idea that the ends justified the means.
Right.
Even if those means involved manipulating and endangering others.
It's interesting you bring up that idea of ends justifying the means, because I think it ties into another pattern that we see with Dumbledore, which is his very selective disclosure of information.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like he was always holding back, only revealing what he deemed absolutely necessary at that particular moment.
Yeah, think about how he kept the full details of the prophecy from Harry for years.
Right.
Only revealing bits and pieces when he thought it was, strategically advantageous.
Or how about in Goblet of Fire?
Right.
When Harry's name comes out of that goblet.
Oh.
I mean, Dumbledore, I think, clearly knew something was fishy.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But he played it so close to the vest. He gave Harry these vague warnings and this cryptic advice instead of just, leveling with him. You're being like, hey, something's really wrong here. I don't know exactly what, but you need to be very careful.
It's like he was almost intentionally steering Harry, right?
Towards this predetermined outcome.
Right.
Right? Like manipulating the situation.
Yeah.
To fit his grand plan.
Exactly. Yeah. And this pattern of secrecy wasn't limited to Harry. I mean, think about Snape. Right? I mean, he was kept in the dark about so much for years.
Yeah.
Operating on a need-to-know basis. It's no wonder he was so bitter and resentful.
Right. I mean, that lack of transparency created this whole atmosphere of suspicion and mistrust. Not just with Snape, but with others as well. Even Harry, at times, questioned Dumbledore's motives.
I remember that scene in Half-Blood Prince when Harry confronts Dumbledore about Snape's loyalty.
Right.
He's furious because he thinks that Snape is in cahoots with Draco Malfoy. But Dumbledore just says, I trust Severus Snape completely. He was so convinced of his own judgment, so sure of his plan, that he didn't feel the need to explain himself to anyone. Yeah, and I think that's a perfect illustration of Dumbledore's kind of unwavering faith in his own ability to orchestrate events.
Right.
But I think it highlights the potential for blind spots when you're operating with that level of self-assuredness, especially when you're dealing with someone as complex and morally ambiguous as Snape.
It makes you wonder if Dumbledore ever considered the emotional toll that his manipulations took on those around him. Did he ever stop to think about the burden he was placing on Snape or the risks he was exposing Hagrid and the students too?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think it's easy to get caught up in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things, right? In the fight against evil
Yeah.
and lose sight of the individual sacrifices that are being made. And Dumbledore, for all of his wisdom and his strategic brilliance, was still a human being,
Right.
susceptible to flaws and blind spots.
Yeah. And speaking of flaws and blind spots, we can't ignore the fact that
Right.
Dumbledore himself was a pretty secretive guy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, for much of the series, we only get these glimpses into his past, his motivations, the mistakes that he made along the way.
It's true. We know he had this complicated history with Grindelwald,
Right.
this dark period in
Oh.
his youth that he clearly regretted. But it's not until Deathly Hallows that we really start to uncover the full truth
Right.
about his relationship with Grindelwald, his sister's tragic death, the guilt that he carried.
It's like he was haunted by his past, and those experiences really shaped his approach to dealing with Voldemort. It makes you wonder if he felt like he had to make these tough choices, even if they were morally questionable.
Yeah.
Because he'd seen firsthand
Yeah.
the devastating consequences of inaction
Right.
and the allure of power.
That's a really insightful point, and I think it adds another layer to this whole debate about utilitarianism and the greater good. Maybe Dumbledore felt like he was uniquely equipped to make those hard choices, to shoulder that burden, because he had learned from his past mistakes.
It almost makes you feel a bit sorry for him. you
Yeah.
know? I mean, here's this guy who's basically carrying the weight of the wizarding world on his shoulders,
Yeah.
making decisions that no one else wants to make, haunted by his own demons.
Yeah.
It's a lot for one person to handle.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even, the most revered figures, right?
Yeah.
The ones we hold up as heroes,
Yeah.
are still flawed and complex individuals. They make mistakes, they grapple with their own, internal struggles, and they sometimes have to make impossible choices.
And those choices, those ethical dilemmas, are what make Dumbledore such a fascinating character
Yeah.
to analyze.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, he's this brilliant, powerful wizard,
Right.
who's also capable of great love and compassion, but he's also willing to manipulate, to deceive, to sacrifice individuals for what he believes is the greater good.
Yeah, it's that duality, that internal conflict,
Right.
that I think makes him so relatable.
Right.
Even if we don't always agree with his methods.
Yeah.
Right? He forces us to confront our own ethical boundaries
Yeah.
and question what we would do in similar situations.
And that's what makes this whole conversation, I think, so compelling. It's not about judging Dumbledore
Right.
or labeling him as good or bad.
No.
It's about exploring the complexities of his choices, the nuances of morality, and the gray areas that we all encounter when faced with difficult decisions.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a conversation that extends beyond the world of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I mean, we see these same ethical dilemmas playing out in our own lives.
Absolutely.
In our personal relationships, in our workplaces, in the decisions we make every day.
It makes you think about those times when you've had to make a tough call, maybe even compromise your own values for what you believed was the right outcome.
Right, were you justified
Yeah.
in your actions?
Did the ends truly justify the means?
Right, those are tough questions, and there are no easy answers. But I think it's through engaging with these kinds of moral dilemmas, through thoughtful discussion and critical analysis, that we can start to develop our own ethical frameworks.
Yeah.
And navigate the complexities of the world around us.
And that's what we're trying to do here.
Right.
To encourage you, the listener, to think critically about these issues.
Yeah.
To question your own assumptions.
Yeah.
And to engage in meaningful conversations about ethics and morality.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that the world isn't black and white.
Yeah.
That there are shades of gray in every decision we make. And sometimes the most difficult choices are the ones that force us to confront our own values and grapple with the unintended consequences of our actions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Dumbledore's ethical dilemmas, I want to leave you with this thought. What would you have done in his shoes?
That's a good one.
Would you have made the same choices? And if not, how would you have navigated
Right.
those complex moral landscapes?
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
Because it challenges us to examine our own beliefs and consider how we would approach similar challenges in our own lives.
And with that, we'll move on to our final thoughts.
It's amazing to me. Like even after we've, gone through all these morally questionable decisions and actions, he still managed to inspire such loyalty, in the people around him.
He did.
Like how did he pull that off?
I think it's a testament to his charisma and his genuine belief in the cause that he was fighting for. I think people like Harry and Ron and Hermione, they saw the good in him.
Yeah.
Even when they questioned his methods.
Right. They understood the weight that he carried, the impossible decisions that he had to make.
I guess when you're facing a villain like Voldemort,
right,
you're maybe a little bit more willing to overlook a few moral gray areas.
Sure.
If it means, achieving the ultimate goal.
Right.
Of defeating evil.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about defeating Voldemort. It was about protecting the entire wizarding world.
Right.
Preserving a way of life. And I think, those stakes change the equation, don't they?
They do, yeah. It makes you wonder though, could he have achieved all of that without compromising his ethics quite so much?
Right.
Could he have been more transparent with Harry?
Yeah.
Given him more agency in his own destiny.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like a giant ethical thought experiment. Right. If we tweak the variables, if we change Dumbledore's approach, would the outcome have been different? Or were those compromises, those morally ambiguous choices, the only way to win against someone like Voldemort?
Right. I mean, we're back to that idea of ends justifying the means.
Right.
And in this case, the ends were pretty massive.
They were huge. Right.
Saving the entire wizarding world.
Right.
But the means were definitely messy.
Yeah.
Ethically speaking.
Yeah, and it's a debate that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries, right? And there's no easy answer. It ultimately comes down to individual interpretation and what each of us considers acceptable, especially when the stakes are so high.
It's almost like he was walking this tightrope between what he believed was necessary and what was ethically right. And sometimes he stumbled.
He did. Yeah. And I think those stumbles, those moral missteps are what make him such a compelling character to analyze.
Yeah.
He reminds us that even the most brilliant, well-intentioned individuals can make mistakes, especially when they're operating under immense pressure.
He was human, after all.
He was.
Flawed, complex, and burdened by his own past. But ultimately, I think, driven by this deep desire to do good, to protect those he cared about, even if it meant making difficult choices.
And those choices, those ethical dilemmas, are what make Dumbledore's story so relevant to us even today.
Right.
Right? They force us to confront similar questions in our own lives.
Yeah.
When is it okay to compromise our values? Where do we draw the line between doing what's right and achieving a greater good?
And sometimes those lines they're blurry, aren't they?
They are.
There's no easy, clear-cut answer. It's something that each of us has to grapple with as we, navigate the complexities of the world around us.
Yeah, right. It's about having those tough conversations, challenging our own assumptions, and recognizing that there's often more than one way to approach a problem.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage you to keep thinking about these questions.
Yeah.
What would you have done in Dumbledore's shoes?
Yeah.
What are your own ethical boundaries? And how do you reconcile those boundaries with the need to achieve a greater good? It's a conversation worth continuing, both within ourselves and with those around us. All right, so everyone get ready, because we are going deep today on this one. A deep dive into a side of Dumbledore we don't really get to see much of.
Oh, yeah.
The man behind the half-moon spectacles.
Right.
Yeah. So we are going to explore how all of his past, especially that time with Grindelwald,
Yeah.
shaped how we acted throughout all the books.
Uh-huh.
I mean, really think about it.
Yeah.
How much of what we do
Right.
is shaped by what we did when we were younger?
It's interesting how much we just assume
Right.
we know about this character,
Yeah.
especially one who's seemingly as straightforward as Dumbledore.
Yeah.
But beneath that grandfatherly
Right.
wisdom lies
Yeah.
this complex history,
Yeah.
which is crucial to
Yeah.
understanding all of his decisions,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to really get into this, we're going straight to the source.
Uh-huh.
No time turner necessary.
Uh-huh.
Remember Deathly Hallows?
Oh, yeah.
When Rita Skeeter, bless her soul,
Yeah, bless her.
dug up all that dirt on Dumbledore's youth.
Mm.
It was more than just like some juicy gossip.
Uh-huh.
It really did show us glimpses into
Yeah.
a Dumbledore we never knew
That's right.
at Hogwarts
Yes.
back in the day.
It's true. While Skeeter's brand of journalism
Yeah,
needs a healthy dose of skepticism,
totally.
she did stumble upon a pivotal truth.
Right.
And that's that Dumbledore's relationship with Grindelwald
Yes.
wasn't just some youthful mistake.
Right.
It was like this defining period that
Yeah.
just shaped his entire worldview.
Imagine young Dumbledore.
Right.
Brilliant, ambitious,
Uh-huh.
falling under the spell
Right.
of someone like Grindelwald.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they weren't even just friends.
Yeah.
They were collaborators
Mm-hmm.
and united by this idea
Right.
of wizarding dominance,
Yeah.
all for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's striking how much that phrase,
Yeah.
for the greater good,
Yeah.
has these really chilling echoes
Uh-huh.
throughout history.
It does throughout history, yeah.
It's the kind of ideology
Yeah, right.
that can seduce people
Yeah.
with noble intentions,
Totally.
but then it warps.
Yeah. And morphs into
Yeah.
something dangerous.
Yeah, and really oppressive.
It's right.
So it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
was there a part of him
Mm-hmm.
that genuinely believed in that vision?
Uh-huh.
Or was he just so captivated by Grindelwald
Yeah.
that he ignored,
Uh-huh.
like, all the ethical red flags
I
blaring in his face?
Yeah.
What I find really interesting
Yeah.
is that this is how his aversion to power
Yeah.
later
Right.
came to be.
That's right.
He knew firsthand
Yeah.
how seductive power is,
Uh-huh.
and he knew the dangers of
Exactly.
unchecked ambition.
Yeah. That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that Dumbledore just rejected power, right?
Right.
He was so wary of it.
Yeah.
He was wary of how
Yeah.
it could corrupt even the purest hearts.
Hmm.
And that wariness, that understanding of humanity's capacity
Yeah.
for darkness, I think became like the foundation
Yeah.
of his leadership at Hogwarts.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
think how different he was
Yeah.
than people like Umbridge
Umbridge Fudge.
or Fudge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they craved control.
They reveled in it.
Yeah, they loved it.
They were obsessed
Yeah.
with their positions of power.
Right.
But Dumbledore seemed to bear like the weight of leadership
Right.
with a sense of humility.
Yeah.
Like he knew that power, especially when wielded over others,
Right.
should always be approached cautiously
Yeah.
and responsibly.
We see that in so many of his interactions,
That's right.
even the small moments.
Yeah.
Say a lot about his character.
Yeah.
Take Prisoner of Azkaban when
Right.
the Dementors attack.
Right.
And everyone's like terrified.
Yeah.
He doesn't try to like assert dominance or anything.
No.
He just calmly talks to the students,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
prioritizing their well-being over,
Over any need.
projecting strength or whatever.
Project strength. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good point.
It's almost like he viewed leadership
Yeah.
as a burden,
Uh-huh.
something that he was entrusted with,
Right.
but not to be wielded lightly.
Right.
He wasn't
power hungry.
He wasn't in it for the control.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which makes his past with Grindelwald
Mm-hmm.
even more fascinating.
Uh-huh.
You have to wonder how seeing those dangers firsthand
Yeah.
shaped how he approached leadership.
Yeah, I think the shadow of Grindelwald
Mhm.
just looms over everything he does,
Yeah.
even decades later.
Right.
It's not just regret, it's like this
Right.
fundamental shift
Yeah.
in understanding. He learned that true leadership comes not from like dominance,
Right.
but from serving, from protecting other people,
Huh.
even at the cost of one's own desires.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Dumbledore.
That's Dumbledore.
Yeah. And that awareness of the dangers of power,
Yeah.
the shadow of Grindelwald, if you will,
Right.
really directly influenced Dumbledore's relationship with Snape.
Snape. Oh, wow.
Yes, yeah.
Now there's a character
Uh-huh.
riddled with contradictions.
Yeah.
How did Dumbledore reconcile Snape's past
Right.
as a Death Eater with, like,
Yeah.
the immense trust
Yeah, the trust.
he placed in him?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone
Was
else,
Brittany?
even Harry, was so suspicious of him.
Yeah, it's one of the most debated parts
Yeah.
of Dumbledore's character.
Yeah.
I mean, was it misplaced faith? Was it a desperate gamble?
Yeah.
Or was it just this calculated risk based
Right.
on a deep understanding of human nature? You have to remember,
Right.
Dumbledore had seen the allure of dark magic firsthand.
Yeah.
He knew the pull of ideologies like Grindelwald.
So he could recognize those same patterns in Snape.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe even empathize a little with
Yeah,
the struggles that Snape faced.
precisely. It wasn't about condoning
Right.
Snape's actions, but
Yeah.
it was about understanding
Right.
like the complexity of his path.
Okay.
Dumbledore believed in redemption.
Mhm.
He believed in the possibility of change, even for someone who'd done
Yeah.
really terrible things.
Yeah, yeah.
And that belief was forged in his own past.
Almost like he saw
Yeah.
a reflection of his younger self
Yeah.
in Snape.
Uh-huh.
Someone seduced by power,
Yeah.
but ultimately capable of changing,
Yeah, yeah.
of choosing a different path.
It's a compelling idea.
Yeah.
Dumbledore, burdened by all of his own past mistakes,
Yeah.
just saw the good in
Yeah.
Snape.
Yeah.
Even when no one else could,
Yeah.
he was willing to extend a hand.
Offer a chance
Yes.
at redemption,
Yeah.
which mirrored, I think, his own
Mhm.
yearning for forgiveness.
But was that trust always justified?
Oh, that's...
I mean, Snape was so volatile,
well,
unpredictable.
he was.
Didn't Dumbledore risk
Yeah.
putting others in danger
Yeah.
by giving him so much power?
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
It's one fans still ask.
Yeah.
Dumbledore's faith in Snape was definitely unwavering.
Right.
But it wasn't blind.
Right.
He constantly tested Snape.
Okay.
He was always gauging his loyalty
Right. Yeah.
to the Order and to the fight against Voldemort.
What about that unbreakable vow
Oh,
that Snape made to protect Draco?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a risky move
it was.
on Dumbledore's part.
Yeah.
Almost like playing with fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was he so sure
Yeah.
of Snape's
Yeah.
like goodness that he underestimated what could
No.
happen?
It's more likely that Dumbledore
Yeah.
understood the risk.
But thought that the potential reward
Okay.
was bigger.
Yeah.
He was playing a long game,
Right.
one that required immense trust
Yeah.
in just a few people,
Right.
even if it meant
Yeah.
putting himself and other people in danger.
It's so interesting how that willingness to trust,
Yeah.
to see the good in people,
Mhm.
even flawed people,
Yeah.
extends to his relationship with Harry.
Yeah.
Dumbledore never wavered
Never.
in his belief that Harry was the chosen one,
Right.
even when Harry doubted it.
Yeah. Dumbledore saw Harry's potential, his inherent goodness, even when it was obscured by just
Yeah.
being a teenager
Right.
with self-doubt.
Yeah.
And that faith, that
Yeah.
support
Right.
was so crucial to
Right.
Harry's development
Yeah.
as a wizard and as a person.
I remember reading Order of the Phoenix for the first time,
Yeah.
and I was so mad
Yeah.
at Dumbledore
Yeah.
for keeping Harry in the dark
Yeah.
about so much.
Yeah.
But looking back now,
Right.
I kind of see he was operating on a different level.
Dumbledore was always
Hmm.
thinking steps ahead.
Yeah.
He was playing the strategic game
Yeah.
against Voldemort.
Mm-hmm.
He understood the power,
Right.
information,
Yeah.
how it could be twisted,
Yeah.
used as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
His past with Grindelwald taught him that
Yeah.
knowledge in the wrong hands
Yeah.
could be just as dangerous
Right.
as any curse.
So by keeping things from Harry,
Yeah.
he was actually shaping him
Uh-huh.
into the kind of leader who wouldn't be tempted
That's right.
by the same things that had led him astray.
Exactly. He was teaching Harry
Yeah.
to distrust power,
Right.
to approach it
Mm-hmm.
with caution and humility.
His mentorship wasn't just about,
Yeah. It wasn't just spells.
spells and potions.
It was about values.
It was about instilling these values.
Yeah. This way of approaching the world
Right.
that prioritized compassion and selflessness
Yeah.
over just wanting power
Yeah.
for yourself.
It's interesting how those themes
Yeah.
of redemption and second chances
Right.
keep coming up throughout all the books.
Yeah.
Not just with Snape and Harry,
Yeah.
but with Draco,
Yeah.
who rejects Voldemort in the end.
That's right.
It's like Dumbledore's belief
Mm-hmm.
that people can change
Yeah.
had a ripple effect,
Yeah.
inspired other people
Yeah.
to choose a different path.
And those choices, those moments of redemption
Yeah.
really contributed to
Right.
Voldemort's downfall.
Yeah.
Dumbledore's understanding of people,
Mm-hmm.
his willingness to believe in second chances
Yeah.
became this crucial weapon
Right.
in fighting the darkness.
It's to think,
Yeah.
what if Dumbledore hadn't had
Right.
that whole experience with Grindelwald?
Yeah.
Would he have been the same leader?
Uh-huh.
Would he have made
Yeah.
the same choices?
Yeah, the same choices, right.
I think it's all our difficult experiences.
Yeah.
All the mistakes we make
Yeah.
that really shape who we become
That's right.
and what we leave behind.
Absolutely. Dumbledore's past
Yeah.
wasn't something that he just tried to forget.
Right.
He learned from it
Right.
and used those lessons to guide others. He understood that our past shapes us,
Yeah.
but it doesn't define us.
Right. Yeah, it's like all those choices he made, especially the ones that seemed kind of questionable,
Yeah.
were part of some master plan,
Oh, yeah.
some strategy from his past.
Exactly. And nowhere is that more apparent
Mhm.
than in his elaborate schemes
Right.
throughout the series.
Yeah.
Just think back to Harry's first year.
Okay.
That whole Sorcerer's Stone thing.
Oh, right.
With all the tests and traps. And
yeah.
the hidden mirror.
Right. It seemed like Dumbledore was behind it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Back then I thought it was to protect the stone.
Right.
But now,
Now you see the layers.
Yeah.
The long game that Dumbledore was playing.
yeah, it wasn't just protecting the stone.
Right.
It was testing Harry.
Yeah. Observing the people around him.
Right. Yeah.
Gathering information.
Yeah.
Remember, Voldemort was still this shadowy threat
Right.
that most of the wizarding world ignored
Yeah, yeah.
or dismissed.
So while everyone was focused on the immediate danger,
Right.
Dumbledore was already thinking ahead,
Yeah.
preparing for this war
Yeah.
that no one else wanted to admit was coming.
Yeah, that's right.
He was using that whole situation
Yeah.
to figure out who was loyal,
Right, exactly.
who was a threat,
to assess who was a threat. Yeah.
maybe even manipulate people
Right. Yeah.
into showing their true colors.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's like he was
Yeah.
playing wizard chess.
Yeah, yeah.
He was already thinking about his opponent's next move.
Right. Well, everyone else was still figuring out the rules.
Right. And that's probably from Grindelwald.
Yeah, that strategic thinking came from his experience with Grindelwald.
Right.
For sure.
It's amazing how all these things
Yeah.
connect together.
It all comes back to Grindelwald.
Yeah, it wasn't just something bad that happened. It
Sorta.
shaped how he led,
Yeah.
how he made strategies,
Uh-huh.
even his belief in second chances.
Right, exactly.
But there's one thing that's still hard to understand.
Yeah. What's that?
Why did he keep Harry in the dark for so long?
Oh, yeah.
I was so mad
I know.
when I first read Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I was ready to...
Yeah.
I wanted to hex Dumbledore myself for all the secrets.
All the secrets and half-truths.
Yeah, yeah.
But now I'm not so sure.
Right.
I almost wonder if that was part of the plan.
I think Dumbledore understood
Yeah.
the burden of knowledge, how it could change how you see things
Yeah.
and affect your choices.
Right.
He knew Harry was connected to Voldemort,
Mhm.
a living Horcrux.
Right.
And if he told Harry too soon,
Yeah.
it could have been awful.
Right. Yeah. Really bad.
So he was protecting Harry
Yeah.
from the truth.
Protecting him from a truth
Yeah.
that could have,
Yeah.
destroyed him
Right.
and led him to make bad choices.
So by not telling Harry everything,
Right.
Dumbledore forced Harry to trust his gut
Uh-huh.
and make his own decisions.
To develop his own sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
His own judgment.
Right. He was preparing Harry to face Voldemort
Uh-huh.
as his own person.
Not as a pawn in some
Yeah.
prophecy,
Yeah.
but as an individual.
Right. Capable of choosing his own path.
Yeah, forging his own destiny.
And it all came from Dumbledore knowing.
Knowing that power corrupts.
Yeah.
He knew that Voldemort craved knowledge.
Right.
That he'd use anything to his advantage.
Mhm. And Dumbledore used that against him
Yeah.
to make Voldemort vulnerable.
Right.
It was a risk.
Right.
It depended on Harry's strength
Yeah.
and the loyalty of his friends.
So Dumbledore's biggest strength wasn't magic
Right.
or strategy.
It wasn't magic. It
It
was
was that he understood people.
It was his understanding of human nature
Yeah.
and his belief in love
Right.
and compassion.
It reminds us
Yeah.
that even when things are bad,
Right.
there's always hope.
Yeah. Dumbledore's life, with all its ups and downs,
Yeah.
teaches us that we can learn from our mistakes that they don't have to define us.
Right.
We can use them to become stronger and wiser.
So what does all this mean for us?
Right. Yeah, what can we...
What's the big takeaway?
Yeah, what can we learn?
From Dumbledore.
From Dumbledore.
That we can use in our own lives.
I think it's this.
Okay.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
But it's dangerous without empathy.
Right.
Without understanding other people.
Yeah.
Dumbledore's life,
Mm-hmm.
his successes and failures remind us that true leadership is about helping others,
Right.
protecting others,
Yeah.
believing that people can change, even when it's hard.
Wow.
Yeah.
That really hits home.
Yeah.
Dumbledore's whole journey,
Mm-hmm.
his mistakes,
Yeah.
his faith in people.
Yeah.
It's all so human,
Yeah.
even in a world of magic.
Yeah, it makes you think
Exactly.
about your own choices,
Yeah.
your own potential for
Mm.
good and bad.
This has been
Yeah.
such an amazing deep dive.
It really has.
Yeah.
Dumbledore is such a fascinating character.
He is.
As Dumbledore himself said.
Right.
We are only as strong as we are united, as weak as we are divided.
Right.
Let's remember that.
Yeah.
That we need to work together
Yeah.
and understand each other
Yeah.
as we go through life.
So well said.
Yeah.
Until next time, everyone,
Yeah.
may your choices reflect
Yeah.
the best of Dumbledore.
Right. And his hope.
And his hope, yeah.